Hi, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec Podcast, where I help you create teams worth leading. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, advisor and coach to tech executives worldwide, and our subject today is innovation safety nets. Before we start talking about that, I'm reminding you that I'll be holding a free live stream next week in the second installment of my coaching upgrade series. If you are serious about upgrading your coaching chops, about becoming the coach your team deserves this year, why not attend? It's free, and if you sign up, you're also going to get a copy of my short ebook about the impact coaching framework. I'm waiting to see you there. Link will be in the show notes as per usual. And now let's talk about innovation safety nets. There's one thing that I keep talking a lot about, and that's the importance of creating teams that are really innovative, that do innovation in have their creativity manifest regularly, because what we see all too often is that teams are just following the day-to-day, doing what Jira told them to do today without trying to be innovative, and then we slap on a once every 6 months 36-hour hackathon to say we're innovative and creative and blah blah blah. Sorry, I don't buy that. If you want to be genuinely innovative, you have to learn how to make innovation come to your team regularly. Yeah, not every day is going to be a eureka moment, and yet you have to find a way for the team to practice its innovation more regularly, or it will not be real. You'll just be paying lip service, claiming to be innovative, yet your best people will realize that. Some will take longer, some will take less, but they will leave. You don't want to be there. You want to create a team that's genuinely innovative. Clearly, one cannot be innovative or will not be closely as innovative as possible when working in very stressful conditions. I don't want you to mix this up with constraints. Constraints really do help creativity. That's something that we see all over the place, and we have so much empirical proof. However, the issue is when you have so much risk, or at least you sense a lot of risk, you're very likely to not be innovative. Why? Because, as the saying goes, when things get tough, when there's a real risk, when we're not sure about the next steps and the stakes are high, what we tend to do is fall back to where we feel safe, to what we already know how to do. And if you already know how to do that, that cannot be innovative by definition. It cannot be novel. And I understand that things aren't as straightforward usually in your work, so I want to share a real example from a startup. They were working on something that actually required genuine innovation, something that required them to come up with a leap in how their models were working to allow them to provide the right experience for their customers. They were facing real market needs, so they had to work really fast in order to not lose the contract to a competitor. And for several weeks, they were making slow to no progress on this. As things were getting tighter, I noticed that the team just kept spinning its wheels instead of making any progress or even trying really. They just got more and more worried about the looming deadlines, about the impact this will have on the business. What we then did was a very simple exercise I like to do, which is assuming the worst. What's the worst thing that can do? Let's say that you realize in 5 minutes that there is no way for you to solve this within the next 3 months. You find something that just lets you know this will not be possible this quarter. What will you do then? I didn't have an answer, right? I'm not an expert in what they do. I just pointed this question at the team. And within a few minutes, literally a few minutes, someone came up with like 3 workarounds cobbled together with some tape that would work. It would be good enough for a few months for the scale and precision they needed for those first few months. I, again, not as an expert, I asked, okay, does that make sense to everyone else? Seems to do. and we moved forward. Knowing that we have that safety net, they were able to communicate that to the go-to-market team, so the sales team knew that they could count on things working out in the next month. The team realized that it now had that safety, and just knowing that, having communicated that to everyone around, knowing the business will be fine, they then sat down to redo their plan for the next couple of weeks. Then, literally within 48 hours, after racking their brains on this problem for weeks, they made the leap to actually fix the thing. So they ended up getting everything they needed on time, but the inflection point here was when they finally realized that they had the safety net, that this was at least not a company ending moment. And once they had that, people all of a sudden had the right creativity, the ability to do things and come up with ideas and make the leap they needed. So we have two things here that are great lessons. First, I want you to think about, how are you being that coach I was there in that moment? I did not have the answers. I did not know if this was possible. I just posed a question and waited to see what the team came up with. And that was enough for them to do amazingly well, to immediately come up with a bunch of workarounds to help us move forward. This also connects to the importance of telling your team what we're looking for. Not just, here is the Jira task and you have to get that specific thing done, but no, here's the business goal. There are a bunch of ways of getting there. How might we do that? And letting them try and come up with more ways of doing things. And after that, once we've established the safety net, we saw real creativity spark. And that's what I want you to take away from this episode. How do you create that in your team? How do you create that atmosphere? A few ways to help you get there. One, I want you to set real expectations. Expectations are realistic, not just always using tight deadlines because someone sometime told you that's the way of keeping teams working fast. They never have too much slack, so they're feeling this sense of urgency and they're always flailing around trying to get things done. That's how you get busy work. That's not necessarily how you get effective work. Again, when we are stressed for time, we're very likely to be just looking straight forward, not looking to the sides, not trying to come up with innovative ways of doing things, but remaining in our comfort zone, doing what we know has less risk. Yeah, that might be necessary, in peak moments when there's a clear need to move forward right now because of whatever constraints you've got. But I would not recommend making that your day-to-day modus operandi. You have to find a better way of managing your team and keeping them motivated and moving fast, and not just whipping at them with fake deadlines. Then, when we're talking about creativity, you have to learn how to create real experiments that, if they succeed, will pay off. I don't want people just tinkering with cool things they saw online, on Reddit, on Hacker News. If they cannot tell me, well, if this succeeds, what we might do, at least not in the day-to-day. This is exactly what longer-term stuff like intermissions might be hopeful for. But when we're talking about mid-sprint, about things we're doing as we're working, I want them to tinker with things that if they succeed, they can immediately show how it's going to help them. And contrast that with how you handle it when innovation eventually fails. Because if all of my experiments are succeeding, by definition, I'm not really being innovative, right? If it cannot fail, it's not creative. It's something that I know is going to work. It cannot be novel. How do you treat it when things eventually don't succeed? Because all of your experiments will work. Some companies get real angry. They might have even retrospectives about why did this fail? I'm like, yeah, we tried something. We had to do it in order to know if it's going to work or not. That's not necessarily the issue. My issue is I want you to ensure that what you're doing makes sense. So make the case for it ahead of time. If this works out, will it actually help us reach our goal or not? If we all agree that it was, knowing what we knew, a good bet to place, then I'm not angry, and neither should you be. That's the sort of mentality you have to have, the culture you want to cultivate in order to have innovation go on. In Italian, they say, ambasciatore non porta pena, or in English, don't shoot the messenger. You cannot blame someone for realizing something doesn't work if they did what they ought to do, if the decision was the right decision to try this. You cannot just reward the experiments that succeed, because then you're always only going to get people doing things that are sure solutions, not creative. You'll never have those leapfrog moments, or they'll be very unlikely. And lastly, if you want to ensure that your team becomes even more creative and makes innovation be habitual, I am biased, but I really recommend you check out my book, The Tech Executive Operating System, back over there. If you check the link in the show notes, you'll get to the book's website where you can get the free sample chapter, which is precisely the chapter about innovation in tech organizations. So you can just get the sample chapter for free and get everything I talked about in this episode and more. So check that out. And of course, if you want to create an even more innovative team, if you want to see how your team can get to a place where you're no longer leading a mediocre team because life's too short for that, you can always also reach out to me. My email's in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in this week. I'm reminding you to check out the free live stream I'm holding next week, and the links to everything are in the show notes. So check those out, and I'll be here next week. Ciao.